The Norwegian immigration to South Dakota during the late 19th century played a staggering effect on the overall population of the state. In 1860, there were a mere 129 Norwegian immigrants in Dakota Territory. Upon reaching statehood in 1889, Norwegians accounted for one-third of the total population. During the 19th century, Norway experienced an economic shift, moving from an agricultural society to an industrial one. This resulted in a rise in the population and less available land. This economic shift became a factor in the rapid immigration to the United States. Jim Hagen was part of this population shift. Jim Hagen arrived in Faughton in 1895 and was employed as the Pickler's hired hand. John Pickler paid his passage from Norway. The condition of the passage required that they work for the Picklers until their fare was paid off. If you've researched your own Norwegian ancestry, or perhaps have read Rolvag's Giants of the Earth, you understand that Norwegian names from this era carry a great deal of meaning. In Jim Hagen's case, we can look at his last name, which comes from the Old Norse word hagi, which means enclosed pasture or garden. It signifies a family's association with farming and agriculture. This association might help us understand why Jim Hagen chose the work of a farm laborer to get his passage to South Dakota. However, I'm sure Jim was in awe when he stepped off the train and encountered the wide-open prairies of Falk County, as opposed to the small farms and mountains of Norway. Through census records, we know that Jim Hagen was a laborer employed by the Picklers, but oral history and family pictures suggest he was much more. Let us use our imagination for a moment about how Mrs. Pickler might have described this relationship.
When Jim first came to our home, he was a young man all the way from Norway, far from the hills and fjords of his homeland. He arrived in Faughton in 1895, determined to make a new life here on the Dakota Prairie. I could see immediately that Jim had been raised to work the land, his hands strong, his back steady, his spirit quiet but dependable. From the earliest mornings, Jim could be found in the barn, milking cows, feeding the horses, and tending the Major's cattle herd. I treasure my memory of Jim raising the United States flag every morning atop the tower of our house, and every evening once again climbing the steps to the tower to lower that flag and light the lantern that served to guide travelers as they traveled through the pitch-dark prairie nights. I remember Jim shoveling the coal into the burner so that we would have heat and hot water each day during the bitterly cold South Dakota winters. He worked long hours, yet there was a quiet rhythm that carried Jim, metered by the seasons and daily chores. Though Jim was technically a hired hand, he quickly became part of our family's daily life. His diligence in the fields allowed our homestead to run smoothly. In family photographs, Jim stands among us, and one caption reads simply, "Jim Hagen, brought from Norway." That small note speaks volumes about the journey he made and the hard work he brought with him. I admired Jim greatly, his quiet pride, his kindness, his loyalty, and his steady presence that made him a beloved member of our family. He carried the memory of Norway with him, yet he found a place here, helping us build the life and the home that would endure long after those early days. Even years later, when I moved to Texas to live with my daughter, Jim accompanied me. He had become more than a hired hand. He was a trusted friend and a steady, familiar presence who had shared in our family's life from the beginning.
We were able to track Jim Hagen through the 1930 census. In this census record, 20 years after Major Pickler's death, Jim Hagen still resided in the Pickler mansion serving as a laborer for Alice Pickler. Visitors to the mansion can visit his room, which is located just down the hall from the tower steps that he climbed so often.